right, welcome everybody to our fourth West Seattle Bridge Community Task Force meeting, coming to you live from my kitchen table where I'm wearing a sweatshirt in July, but that I won't take up my whining with any time for this call. So a quick bit of housekeeping before turning it over to our co-chairs. Today, as I described earlier, we're going to explore the far reaches of this WebEx technology, so we ask for patience and grace. But in an effort to try and have more time for direct conversation and dialogue, we're going to try, we are going to successfully have breakout groups for discussions, and the way that is going to work is that people will receive a link to their specific breakout group via email, and we will leave this link. We will use that new link for our breakout group, and we will depart that breakout group and return through this link that we are all at right now. And I know that we can all do this, and we will all do it together. And I fully acknowledge that it's not as smooth or as easy as some other platforms make this. So thank you, and I'm keenly and acutely aware of that fact. So we will work through that with all of you, and if we are able to pull it off, I think it will be a wonderful addition to our ability to have these discussions in more intimate and thoughtful and interactive ways. And so with that, I will now turn it over to our co-chairs, where Paulina is going to talk about the working agreements, and Mary Nichols is going to introduce some new faces who are joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Michael. I'll kick off with the introductions. Katie Garrow. Katie, welcome. I saw you on here a moment ago. Well, she was here. Katie, are you on mute?
Hi, I'm back. Sorry. I was coming from another meeting. The labor movement this morning was doing a training on anti-racism for unions, so I had to dip out of that early. But my name's Katie Garrow. I'm the Deputy Director at MLK Labor. I staff our work on infrastructure and transportation in particular, and I'm happy to be here because I live in White Center, and there's a lot of people clogging up the Myers Way exit that I use in White Center who live in West Seattle. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome. We also, I believe, have Port Commissioner Fred Bellman here. Is Fred joined us? Peter Steinbrook is traveling for the port, so the commissioner, I believe, is...
I'm on right now.
There you are. Welcome, and introduce yourself, sir.
I am Port of Seattle Commission Vice President Fred Felleman, and I am on my 5th year here, and I'm very much concerned, as you all are, about maintaining access, both to the soon island of West Seattle, but more importantly to us immediately is the terminals along Elliott Bay. So I'm standing in for Peter for the meeting to have me into this issue.
All right, thank you, sir. Welcome. And we have Councilmember Tammy Morales, I believe, is joining us today. She's the third member of the Transportation Committee. Councilmember, are you here?
I don't see her yet.
Okay. Anyway, we really appreciate the engagement of our council members, and hopes that she gets a chance to join us for our number one item on the agenda, which will be the breakout where we get to talk to one another in more depth. And with that, Paulina?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us again today in our fourth meeting. I want to make sure that all the new people feel welcome. We have been receiving some of your feedback and the I do want to take some time to thank you for those recommendations. We're trying something different today because we're listening to what you're saying and the need to be talking to each other and hear from each other's ideas and recommendations. So bear with us as we're planning something new, breaking into rooms. I'm all excited to have more in-depth conversations. I also want to thank you for sending your recommendations on the group agreement work. Oh my God, group working agreement. So, like, we have been working with Greg and the team and finalizing these documents. And as you can see on this PowerPoint, we came to these 15 agreements all together that reflect, hopefully, all your important recommendations and how we should be working as a group. So we talked about acknowledging, respecting differences, balancing the work, the advocacy that we all do, and giving a space to all the people that are represented on this group as this is a community task force, respecting everyone's role, approaching everything as a team, but also we know that you all represent different stakeholders, so we are also respecting that, as well as committing to difficult conversations and making sure that we are all bringing to this group what's the best on us, and we all know that we're here because we feel impacted, so we want to make sure that we all feel heard. So those are the 15 working agreements. Take it to your heart, and thank you for bringing to this journey with us. So before we do this, we're going to be listening from Michael Donenhart for a quick brief update, and then after we're going to be splitting into some groups. Thank you all for having us.
Thank you, Paulina. And yes, now we'll turn it over to Matt Donahue for an update on the bridge.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Mayor Nichols, and thank you, Ms. Lopez. Good afternoon, everyone. So to start with, this may be a refresher for some of you folks that have heard me speak about this particular graphic in the past, and new information for folks that are just joining us. Where we are at currently right now on the bridge is we are still doing our stabilization work, and I'll have specifics about that in the next slide. Going forward from where we're at today, we have already engaged in and begun a cost-benefit analysis with our consultant WSP, with internal SDOT staff, of course, and with our technical advisory panel, the co-chairs for that group I think you've met before. And this graphic describes generally the questions that we're asking ourselves or have been asking for a while now on the repair of the bridge and replace it later versus replacement options now, or that we pivot to as soon as we're done stabilizing the bridge. There's not too much, nothing's really changed in this graphic since the last time, with the following caveat. We did hear and take under consideration comments from the CTF and from others about adding the bridge option to the discussion at the cost-benefit analysis level instead of waiting until we're doing a type, size, and location replacement study, crossing replacement study in the future. And so we have decided to do that, and we've asked our consultant WSP to provide us a scope, schedule, and fee estimate to add that option very high level to the cost-benefit analysis. And so I imagine as we finalize that work with WSP, we'll have more information for the CTF in the weeks to come. Next slide, please. So we are doing stabilization work right now. As problematic as this is for the community, we are very concerned about the community in this asset. So it's without ignoring or diminishing the stress and strain to the community, we are excited to be on the bridge and doing this work to stabilize it and significantly minimize the risk of collapse in the future. And so Kramer, if anyone's been around the bridge, you'll see Kramer, North America, our construction contractor, is actively on the bridge with a hydro demolition unit. They're cutting holes in the bridge so that we can take wire rope hoists that are mounted to steel frames, place them on the top of the bridge, drop those wire ropes down through the holes that we've cut for access, and then pick up a lifting frame that's currently sitting next to the bridge in between Pier 17 on the high bridge and Pier 7 on the swing bridge. And so that first lift, so the frames already been moved via barge and then placed on shore, and that frame will be lifted up to the bridge on Monday. That'll be the first lift. And from there, the sequencing is very carefully choreographed. And what we'll do is put a minimum amount of carbon fiber wrap on the outside of the bridge. And that's to capacity protect the cracked sections of the bridge so that it can take the load when we later in the coming weeks put post-tensioning strand on top of the interior floor of the girders and tension that strand. So we're dealing with a crack and weak bridge. When we put that post-tensioning strand in, we want to do no harm. We don't want to make it any worse. And then after that post-tensioning strand is tensioned, we'll release the bearing that is problematic at Pier 18 and then go back and put additional, more robust carbon fiber wrap on the outside of the center sections of the bridge. And with that update, I think I will pass it back to Michael.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, this is very exciting, and it's fun to see lots of work and people on the ground doing lots of things around the bridge. So appreciate the update, Matt. We are now going to turn it over to myself just for a very quick update as it relates to a presentation from Heather before heading into breakout groups. So just yesterday, Mayor Durkin transmitted a 6-year Seattle Transportation Benefit District proposal over to the council. And this would be a proposal that both replaces and renews the current Transportation Benefit District that expires at the end of this calendar year. And rather than taking up too much time talking about all of the different components, what I wanted to particularly flag for this group is that the idea of a renewed Transportation Benefit District is to address a multitude of emerging needs, but perhaps none more critical and given more specific attention and focus in this 6-year Transportation Benefit District or the needs of West Seattle. So if we could go to the next slide. You heard Heather talk about the vision for Reconnect West Seattle. And part of that vision is asking those who are able to make a transition away from single occupancy vehicles coming on and off the peninsula, those who are able to make those transitions, transportation via transit will be essential and will be upwards of 30% of that vision for restoring similar levels of travel across the Duwamish. And in the midst of very difficult and challenging budget times for the city, for our partners in Metro, we have to have the resources to be able to support that. And the 6-year Seattle Transportation Benefit District introduced yesterday, if passed by voters in November, will be a critical level of support to make that vision a reality. And so I just wanted to make that linkage for folks, particularly as we are preparing to launch all of the Reconnect West Seattle materials this week. And so with that, I will turn it over to Heather as we move to the next slide.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you again. This, much like Matt's graphic, is something that you've all seen before. And so you may recall that Reconnect West Seattle is our effort to help improve mobility and keep the mobility for West Seattle and the Duwamish Valley at the same level it was before the high bridge was closed. But in order to do that, we, SDOT, need to make some improvements, and all of us who live in West Seattle and the Duwamish Valley may need to make some changes in the way that we are getting around. So SDOT have collected all of the ideas, and we've developed those initial proposals on Friday. We are going to make available all of those proposals for public input. And we want to hear from everybody what they think about those things, which projects are the most important. We'll take that feedback, revise it, and then identify those final prioritized projects. Once we have that all together, we'll send it back out to the community task force so that you will have an opportunity to see what happens when you meld the transportation knowledge of the Department of Transportation along with the local knowledge of folks who are using the transportation system. And then we will start building those projects. So, next slide, please. What we need from the community task force is to help generate involvement in that prioritization and survey activity. We're going to send you a toolkit that will include a launch email and a post for community so that you can use your own networks, whether they are face-to-face networks or social media networks, to generate some engagement there. On July 17th, the mobility survey postcard will get sent to West Seattle addresses. On the 27th, we'll send a reminder email and a post to you for your distribution. And then on July 31st, the surveys will close. The next steps in that will be on August 5th and August 19th. We will review the results and hear input. And then in early September, we will have that Reconnect West Seattle plan. To the extent that that we can shave any time off of that, we definitely want to, because we understand very clearly how important it is for us to move forward with all of this work. But we also wanted to have the opportunity for a true community-led process. And sometimes that takes a little time. So, Michael, should we move on? Yes.
Yeah, I think we can move on, but I would just add the caveat that SDOT is ready to walk all task force members through all the materials in as much detail or as little as you would find helpful and preferable. And we will include in that launch of materials just added context for all the expenditure and effort we're putting in and have put in to ensure that as many people as possible see this survey and have the opportunity, if interest, schedule, and life permits, to participate and make sure that their voice is heard, including translations like you wouldn't believe. And so I'll just put that offer out there.
So Deb and Dan, yes, survey postcards are being sent to residents of South Park, Georgetown, and Soto. Absolutely. Okay, shall we move on to the next slide, please? So, okay, I'm just going to pause so that we can think about these factors, these three fundamental truths that as they relate to funding and the West Seattle Bridge. First, we are going to do what's best for the community, and the bridge will drive our decisions. So we aren't going to pick the least expensive option unless the least expensive option is what's best for the community and the bridge. Second, it's very likely, more than likely, that any repair or replacement scenario would exceed the city's financial means without outside funding. So these are just true. In addition, like almost every city in the United States, we are stepping up to the challenge of maintaining our aging infrastructure in the face of grossly insufficient federal funding. Federal infrastructure investment in relation to gross domestic product has fallen by half in the past 35 years. Leaving the disproportionate bulk of this burden to state and local governments to deal with the $123 billion backlog of unfunded bridge rehabilitation needs. And so, we are seeing right here a real-world example of that. Despite these challenges, SDOT is prioritizing the safety and resiliency of our transportation infrastructure while simultaneously making new investments to keep our city moving, as are our population grows at unprecedented rates. So these are the three pillars, the three legs of the stool that we need to be mindful of as we move through conversations about how we fund this bridge repair or replacement. Next slide, please. So the upcoming cost-benefit analysis is going to compare repair and replacement scenarios. And when I say replacement, I want to make it clear that we are going to compare replacement in kind with a bridge, a couple of different ways, and we are going to include replacement with a tunnel. The draft criteria that we're going to use for that cost-benefit analysis will be presented to the Community Task Force in August. We would need to run that through our internal SDOT GRIST as well as the technical advisory panel before we bring that to you. We want to make sure it's in tip-top shape. No matter which path we altogether select, we need to explore every funding option because my favorite joke about this is we're going to need $5 from everybody. It's unlikely that any one funding option is going to be enough, so we have to pursue every funding option. We're taking the necessary steps right now to be ready to take advantage of any funding opportunity that makes its way to the top. Next slide, please. So there are lots of different kinds of ways that you can pay for big, expensive public infrastructure. You can repurpose SDOT funds. You can get a direct federal appropriation, though that's a lot harder these days. We could pursue state and federal grants, which we are. We could take advantage of low-interest loans, like the Transportation Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act, better known to us transportation nerds as TIFIA. We can also partner with other local authorities, like the Port or King County. And so those are some of the options available, and then many of these require paying money back, right? So a municipal bond sale, also known as debt financing, that has to be paid back. Tolling is an option that we have to look at. Public-private partnerships, including DBOM, design, build, operate, and maintain. These are options that we are going to be looking at as we move forward. Some kind of voter measure like the Seattle Transportation Benefit District, and also value capture, which would include an LID, Local Improvement District, user fees, or impact fees. An example of a local improvement district is the way that we are paying for the new waterfront road and promenade. So that's all being paid for partially with an LID. Next slide, please. Impact fees, Paulina, generally are fees that are paid by developers that pay for the impact that their development would have on the surrounding community. It's a big, interesting policy conversation that we have episodically in the transportation world and at the City Council. So the next step, in order to keep all of these options on the table, because like I said, we have to keep all the options on the table for the moment, is we need an investment grade traffic and revenue study. This is a study that is completed by a team of transportation professionals and economists who, and it could support both bond repayment and repaying a TIFIA loan. There aren't very many consultants who do that kind of work. It's a pretty small community. It takes about 18 months to complete. We're going to release an RFQ in July, so that's this month. We're going to check in with the task force throughout the study. We'll have the consultants come out and present to you so that you see where we are. And fundamentally, the investment grade traffic and revenue study is going to help us answer some really important questions that SDOT has, but that I imagine you have too. It's going to create a travel demand model of the bridge corridor, so we'll understand what the demand for travel space is. It is going to develop and refine traffic volume projections, not just for the bridge, but for all the surrounding infrastructure. It's going to investigate tolling scenarios and related traffic diversion. So if it is the truth that when you toll a facility, some people choose not to pay the toll, and that's called diversion. And so that traffic diversion has an impact, and so this study would help us describe and understand what kind of impact that diversion would have on the rest of the system. And it would also, and this is the investment grade part, provide an analysis of the ability to use tolls to repay our debt, whether it's bonds. There is a chipper across the street. I don't know if you can hear the chipper, but we're just going to close the window there. That's some good timing. So it will conduct an analysis of the ability of tolls to repay debt, whether that debt is from bonds or the TIFIA loan. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next thing.
Very good. Thank you, Heather.